Did Supreme Court nominee Sonia Sotomayor play more of a role in this controversial group than first we knew? She is coming under new criticism this morning as new questions arise about her support for racial preferences in the workplace. Now, recently, you may recall, she came under fire for her ruling in a case that allowed discrimination against white and Hispanic firefighters in favor of African-American firefighters who did not score as well on a promotion exam. Now we learn that for more than a decade, Sonia Sotomayor sat on the board of the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, and we learned that that fund took some very controversial positions. Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions is a Republican, and he is the ranking member for the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is a man who will be cross-examining Sonia Sotomayor as early as Monday. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning, Megan.
I know, let me just set it up so the viewers understand. She was part of this organization that I mentioned, this Puerto Rican Legal and Education Defense Fund. And she sat on the board. She was the vice president of it. And now we learn that this group took some very controversial positions pushing for racial preferences in the workplace for minorities and in particular for people of Hispanic descent. Do we know whether she specifically supported those positions?
Well, she was a member of the board and was very active in the organization, according to the New York Times. And I would assume she fully understood the major litigation they were undertaking at the time. And it does relate to the firefighters' case, and since they consistently attacked the results of some of those New York Police Department and Fire Department type cases. And I think it raises questions about is that her philosophy, and is she going to carry that to the courts and apply it even if the law does not support it?
Well, some of these memos talk about how the group had done very well, the group that she was a part of, that she was on the board of, had done very well in challenging promotions exams for firefighters and police departments in New York City, saying that they managed to get affirmative quotas, which they liked. Some testing was thrown out altogether, which they liked. And then they talk about how they're going to have a tough time winning these cases in the future because the city of New York had hired psychologists and had made the tests a lot better, saying this is going to make our job tougher because these guys are skilled technically and doing a good job. The question is, Senator, wouldn't even the members of this defense fund want the psychologists hired by the New York police and firefighters to do a good job so they wouldn't have to sue? Or does this suggest a more radical agenda?
I think that's a very good point. And with regard to the firefighters case, the Connecticut case, the concern is that the court dismissed even before trial the complaints of the firefighters who felt they had been discriminated against by the elimination of the test that they passed, and whether or not that prior history of advocacy infected her decision. Of course, it was reversed. Her opinion was reversed by the Supreme Court. All 9 justices agreed that there should have been at least a trial, and 5 of them reversed the case entirely based on the record that this was a fair test. And once you set up a fair test and go forward with it, the people who pass that test are entitled to be put up for promotion, and those who didn't should not. And no one found that that test was unfair.
Now, the White House has come out and tried to distance her from these documents, saying, look, you know, she was on the board. That's not that big a deal. She wasn't the lawyer actually responsible for pushing these policies while she was on the board of the Puerto Rican Legal and Education Defense Fund. And her advocates have come out and said, look, you would be hard-pressed, Senator, to find an Hispanic justice of note who hadn't done some time working for one of these organizations, some sort of civil rights organization that advanced the cause of Puerto Ricans or Hispanics or what have you. This is not unusual, and to try to impugn her by saying she was responsible for everything that organization did is really unfair. Your response?
Well, I think we shouldn't impugn anybody for participating in an organization or participating in a lawsuit, but it's pretty clear her active participation on the board as a supervisor of the lawyers who actually litigated the cases is important, and there's no evidence that she objected to the positions they were taking. I assume she supported them. The question really is this a philosophy that she's allowed to influence her decision-making process on the bench as a circuit judge in this case, the firefighters case, or later on the Supreme Court when other cases similarly come before the court? That's what I think every senator has to ask themselves about as they go forward. That's just one of the questions they'll need to ask.
And one of the questions we assume you'll be asking as we watch you question the nominee beginning next week during her confirmation hearing. Senator Sessions, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Megan.
All the best.